It used to be that a home was one of the things that you couldn't fake. It was dirt, it was timber, and the way that the light hit the floor beds at 6 a.m. It was the only truth that we had left in the world that was turning into pixels. But we've crossed the threshold. We aren't just looking at the map anymore. We are living in a hallucination of that said territory. We are currently sleepwalking into a reality where the roof over our head is decided by the predictive model, and the rustic charm you fell in love with on the screen never actually existed. It's just a ghost. And my guest today is an architect of said brave world, here to pull back the curtain on the machinery decided who gets to live where and for how much. So here's the question that should make you uncomfortable. When the algorithm decides that the value of your shelter based on the market sentiment, predictive revenue, or are you still that specific resident, or are you just a yield-bearing asset in a server farm? We really need to talk about this hyper-realistic staging phenomenon. It feels like we are creating a dissonance between the eye and the soul. You look at a listing and it's beautiful, it's perfect, mid-century modern furniture, the light is hitting the quartz just right, but it's not real. It's generative. And you walk into this physical house, it feels cold, it's empty, smells like damp drywall, but the brain, the chimp brain, has already bonded with the digital lie. We are hacking the dopamine loop of a home to hook buyers on a fantasy. It's like dating on Instagram filter. Doesn't really make any sense. So like at what point does enhancing a property cross the line into psychological fraud? If the algorithm sells a dream on the physical bricks that can't be delivered, are we simply optimizing for buyer's remorse, or have we reached a point where the digital hallucination actually holds more market value than that reality? It's like we take the standardized, oh, let's just make sure that the lighting is perfect, that we shoot the video and the images during the daytime to make sure that the house feels bigger and roomier and more warm than it actually is, to now a whole nother side of things. I don't know if you've been seeing that. So like, do you feel like this is kind of crossing the line a little bit?
Of dishonesty of sorts.
Yeah, like
Kind of the
dishonesty
vibe I
and
got
like
from
this
you.
is, yeah, we're kind of like pushing the bounds a little bit here. Like, is this really market value, or is this just like now we're bending reality to assume, you know?
For the first time ever, let me throw a question back to you. So when you see a Carl's Jr. ad and then you go buy a Carl's Jr. burger,
It's not the same.
do you feel duped, honestly?
Oh yeah, always, constantly.
I do too, a little bit. I went to Panera. This has now been a long time ago, but it's so stuck in my mind. I went to Panera because I saw something that looked so delicious on an ad, and I went there and I was so hungry and I was so excited to eat this meal. And I got there and did it not just kind of look anything like it. It was half the size, and it was just a horrible, horrible experience. And I did feel duped. And as a result, I'm not going back to Panera because I
Yeah.
felt so detached from the advertising. How do you feel about something like that as well? Because this exists in other parts of our life.
Well, Panera is a specific example. They've cut their costs. I mean, this isn't specific to Panera, but like I used to love their sandwiches. They had this like Chipotle chicken sandwich that they had. The bread was freshly made there. It was baked there. Everything was from scratch.
Yeah.
Now all the bread is just, bought. It's lower quality. It's shipped there. It's not baked in house. The amount of like items in the serving of the sandwich, the chicken, the whatever, the ingredients had been reduced and the quality had been reduced. So yeah, it's disheartening to see that. But I mean, we've been duped for food. I remember when I saw like a McDonald's Big Mac burgers, and it just looked spectacular. I was like, wow, I would actually eat this burger. In reality, it's made out of horse meat. God knows what it's made out of. I'm not a fan. Like if I'm going to do a fast food burger, it's usually a Joe's burger.
Mm.
It's a pretty consistent, good quality burger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just ask because I agree with you, man. When we spend a lot of time, Mo, talking about AI, and commonly a theme is where should the line be between truth and make believe, or reality and AI, and what should be labeled and what's the appropriate application for it and all that. And in marketing, I just would say that the professional who's doing the marketing, if their glamour shot is from 20 years ago and all of their homes are virtually staged and none of the content is written by them, it's all written by an AI, and you see where I'm going with this. If their entire world is a constructed, manufactured, curated version of non-reality, then I do think that that's a sign that you've gone too far in your quest for either perfection, or for likes, clicks, and views, or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm a fan of obviously doing a great job for your client. In this case, the listing agent doing a great job for the seller, making the property look really good. And there's something to be said for attracting the people there. But then what is always my question. Then what if it doesn't look at all like in the videos and at all in the images that you touched up, and you did not disclose that there was the power lines in the backyard, and you avoided the house right next door with the trailer and the barking dogs and the whole thing, and is that marketing, or is that, like, where's the line there, Mo? I'm honestly just curious about your brain for a moment this morning.
I think the line. So this is where things kind of get in the gray area, because
and if you don't mind, I would make sure people understand we recognize the laws and the rules about what you can Photoshop out and what you can't. So let's just, in every industry there's compliance and truth in marketing and whatnot. So let's set that as aside and let's just have a discussion about that more.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a difference between identifying the potential of something and blatantly lying about the current standard of something. And so as long as there is some sort of acknowledgement that, well, here is the house as it is, this is what it could be with the potential that we see in it, and showcase maybe a before and after, that is an entirely different scenario than just using AI to generative fill and fabricate lies to make something look entirely different than what it is in reality. Because you give somebody the hopes of what it actually could be with just doing these minor tweaks, and then perhaps maybe even giving an explanation or a summarized version of what the things were added to make it look like the dream home or like your dream kitchen or whatever it is, right? I think that is completely fine. That to me is positioning done right within the core market, and you're giving them hopes. And especially when you're in that buyer mentality, what if you want this dream house, but it's out of your budget? Well, this is the potential that you could do, and this is how much it would potentially cost, versus just, well, I can't afford a $3 million house with a chef's kitchen, but I can build a chef's kitchen based off of what I was shown here. That to me is exciting. That is positioning and marketing at its finest.
Worked on this concept for showcasing listings because one of the problems with a lot of tools in real estate is that they're so 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And so even, so common in the industry is something called a single property website, where the agent has a website built or a template created that, is just features this single listing, and you give links to it. And it's a way to, have a more in-depth, digital asset that helps sell the property.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why on these pages we don't have some more AI powered features. So as an example, instead of showing like just the house in a fake digitally staged state, what if it had, a photo with a slider, and you can like move the slider back and forth so you can see it in current condition and then, staged. And then you could push a button and say, I want to see this with new deco, and I want to see this with blue cabinets, and I want to see this with, staged as Northwest Contemporary, right? So you'd be able to control as a user your visualization of the state, knowing that you're manipulating it, right? Like you're having options. You're being able to play with the space in your mind to see, how can I make this mine? How can I make this look and feel like me, or what it would look like with my furniture in it. So take a photo of your living room furniture and then, have it virtually staged with your furniture, not just some random furniture that the listing agent has picked. That's what I think that the right application of this technology is giving almost like a lab, like a visual lab, place for the buyers to play in, and not be forced to see it as the listing agent hopes you see it, or as the seller hopes you see it because it's been digitally altered and staged in some way. But give them a playground of sorts to be able to personalize it and make it theirs. That's what I think that the industry should be moving towards, is that sort of immersive sort of experience. How do we empower the visitors and the buyers to visualize things and make it feel like them before they write that check, right? So they know this is going to be just a great decision. And we don't have tools like that currently. There's nothing like that is, done at scale. I'm sure people have individual tools that do things to a certain degree, but nothing that's offered of sorts to the industry. And I think that's where we should be heading, is that sort of collaboration with the buyers, faking it for the buyers.
Yeah. There was this game, I can't remember if it was on the Oculus or whatever console, but it's VR. And you know, with VR, like you're able to see, you feel like you're immersed into the game or whatever. This specific one, it was able to invite the game into your own atmosphere, essentially. So it was a horror game, and I'm not a fan of horror or anything. It's just not my cup of tea. But you
Have
were
you
able
seen
to
Weapons,
play.
though, by the way? Have you seen the movie Weapons?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'm not normally a horror guy either, but you should put Weapons on your list to watch.
All right, I'll definitely check it out as long as it's not like freaky.
It's a little bit freaky because it's a little bit of a horror, but there's only maybe 3 scenes, and I wouldn't normally advertise something because I don't like horror films either. But
Yeah.
for some reason, the way it was masterfully story told, and from a cinematic movie perspective and storytelling perspective, I think you would really enjoy it. But anyway, sorry to get distracted.
Sweet. No, I'll definitely take a look at it for
Yeah.
sure. It was just all I was saying is that, so this new game was able to, you were able to invite, you're essentially able to play this horror game in your own home, and so the home that you're living in becomes the playing field. So you're playing the game, and like, oh, that's your closet that shit pops out of.
Okay.
You know?
Oh,
Or like, yeah.
Okay,
Or like
got you.
yep. Or the fireplace now has this like dreary, like haunting look to it. And all of a sudden, like that would personally freak me out because now I would envision that my home is fucking haunted.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But I just thought that was cool in terms of the technology. Like you could use that, you know, walk into a house instead of just the generic geometric freaking like, here's a image where you can see how your table would look. It's different. It's completely immersive.
Yeah.
It feels and looks real. So like something like that would be cool for like a realtor or a real estate firm to be able to adopt.
Yeah,
kind of
that
technology.
would be. That would be. I mean, I like virtual staging in some instances. I like, immersive. There's some new technology where you can create a walkthrough, just from your phone and not need to use Matterport and things like that anymore. You can stitch it together using AI software. There's a new trend. I don't know if you've seen this new trend in real estate where essentially, like on Canvas, you can put either a picture of an empty room or a picture of a fully staged, finished room as the first state. So let's say that you had a picture of a staged living room and it looks beautiful and it's ready for marketing. You can give that to the AI as the first video state, but then give it a prompt to essentially like take out and unroll the things one by one in the room, over this 8-second video. And then you do that, and then the video is created where, the chair slides out, the lamp turns off, the carpet rolls up, the end table slides out of the room, those sorts of things. And then if you play it backwards, it looks like all the stuff is being installed into the room. So, you hit rewind, and then the couch slides in, the lamp slides in, the light turns on, the carpet unfurls, the fireplace turns on, and it looks like the room has been kind of staged in real time in front of you. It's a really neat editing trick that you can do. Or you can do it the other way. You take a picture of a vacant room and then give it a staged look, right? And then you create motion between the vacant room and the staged room, and it looks like all those things are installed in that way. It's a really cool effect. You get room after room after room, so it looks like somebody's essentially moving in. Each room kind of becomes alive in real time. That's something that you can do that is a neat way to use AI to effectively tell a story with the right music, and it kind of like coming to life, going from a vacant, empty house to this lived in, staged, beautiful room. That's a neat, application, I think, of an AI video tool that's more than just like a pan with some music, or a slow zoom in with music, or even worse, the realtors that just run through and give those speed demos where I'm like, bro, I can't even see the details here. I want to see this house. Like, I like that. Have you seen those yet?
No, I haven't. I can't say that I have.
Did that make sense, what I was trying to describe, without you having seen it?
Yeah. It sounds like an immersive thing. I think that in time, the complexity or the resistance to be able to apply those things will be almost, just as easy as sharpening a pencil for people.
Yeah, it already is now, as long as they know that A, it can be done, or B,
Okay.
Have the creativity to want to try something like that instead of just doing it the way they've always done.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm hopeful for with AI is that it causes people to be able to create trends of their own in some way instead of just following trends that they see on social media. Because creativity is one thing, and then the steps to execute it is another. And so you see, like, it's so easy to just follow a trend that you see online because it's already, the path is already paved for you, right? How to do it, everything has already been paved for you. And I hope that as AI gets more and more prevalent in more and more people's business, that they start asking the questions like, all right, what do I want to do that's creative? What do I want to do that fits on brand? What do I want to do with this particular listing in this neighborhood that attracts this particular buyer in this personal way? And they create their own trends, their own way of collaborating with the buyer and seller, their own way of demonstrating, their expertise in a marketplace, and not just follow a trend. I hope that that's something that is done more and more and more, because you can do that if you just think, this is the way I'd like to showcase this house. AI, how would I do this? Instead of following their templatized, IDX brokerage websites and just following the Matterport thing and like just doing what's always been done. It's a really great time to think creatively now.
I agree. I think at this point, if you're still doing the same things you were doing 20 years ago, it absolutely makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless,
are you still faxing documents, or are you sending them through DocuSign?
It's fun. There are some, I don't want to mention any names. They still require faxes. It's so funny.
Oh, I know there's still some organizations that require faxes, which is mind-boggling to me.
I know.
I think I touched on this a couple episodes ago, that there was an organization, the company, that required a fax. And I was like, I don't know where the hell I'm going to find a fax machine. And I was searching, and you can download an app now that transfers it into whatever and sends it via fax. You pay whatever it is, a couple bucks for like the month, because you have to subscribe to it. But it converts the PDF and sends it over to a traditional fax machine, which is just silly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, some people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at kind of like flipping the lens here in terms of perspective of like predictive revenue intelligence. I know that this is like a new realm, especially in finance, real estate, and there's a couple other industries that are adopting this, but I see it more and more with this tool like Retina, that I think I did some due diligence on it, and on paper I think it's a brilliant business, but high resolution efficiency, but you're moving from like reactive reporting to proactive AI. And there could be some discrepancies with that, especially when you consider the fact that some of these, AIs can hallucinate and whatever and what have you. I look at it when you have the keys, in a sense, to let's say a landlord-tenant relationship and you hand it over to like a model designed solely for extraction. There is a discrepancy there. I think there is something that happens between the social construct that kind of divides that entire thing, and it ends up crumbling. And I look at it like, okay, so are we building a housing market that is technically efficient but socially sociopathic? Or are we building something that could be sustained for the long term? I just see it kind of having an issue, because we're optimizing for logistics. I get that. We're optimizing the extraction of wealth from basic human need to not freeze to death and not starve and what have you. I understand. I think in my optimistic brain is all for it. My logical brain says, well, it's been done in other countries. I think Sweden doesn't have any homelessness. Is it Sweden or is it Switzerland? I can't remember. They've like pretty much negated homelessness. So I'm like, okay, so there is a formula there that has worked, but how can we adopt that with our current societal construct? Is that even possible? I just thought it was interesting to mention in this podcast, because we do discuss the business realm and how AI is helping and making us money. Well, what about how the impact of AI to be able to help people? What can we do? Can it create a system that will allow anyone to have shelter? That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
First of all, I think it is Finland that you're
Finland. Okay, thank you.
And
I knew it was one of those.
Man, from marketing to homeless, your brain was on fire this morning thinking of these questions.
Oh, no, this was a few days ago.
Yeah.
My brain is not on fire.
So homelessness, as far as AI, no, man, I don't see those being connected in any way for a while, in any way. I don't
like in terms of AI being able to build a system,
so
that it can
that's
solve that equation?
No, because that's assuming that that's a system that somebody's working on to fix in any real way in America, and it's not being looked at in that way. So until it's pointed that way, and there's a bunch of people that are actually really working on that problem, and I'm not talking about the good humanitarian sort of volunteers, and small organizations and communities or churches. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about at a meta level, at the government level, where it actually needs to be worked on. So what I mean by that is without sounding overly pessimistic and nonchalant, is the complexity of homelessness isn't just whether or not do we have facilities to put people in. There's actually plenty of studies that show one of the reasons why like Finland is that way is not just because they have housing to put people in, but they actually have a culture of people that want to not be homeless. And so AI is not going to fix the cultural problem and the mental illness problem that we have with American style homelessness, which is not the same thing as a destitute. Like I just lost my house. It's an intentional selection, and most of the homeless camps that we see, especially around the Northwest and in progressive cities, are not homeless camps. They're open air drug markets. They're open air crime markets. They're open air sex marketing, trafficking sites, criminal organizations, not destitute homeless people just looking for a handout. So that's not the right label. Like we shouldn't be even calling them homeless camps. That's not what they actually are. But progressives do that in a way for this never-ending fundraising ability to say, oh, we need to raise money and bond for homelessness, and then it just gets misappropriated and used in other ways. So I don't see AI actually being pointed at the homeless problem in America in any meaningful way, as far as I can see it. Just be perfectly honest, man. I just don't.
Yeah, it's sad, but I'd have to agree with you.
For instance, in Oregon here, we have one of the highest homelessness issues around Portland, and they say we decriminalize drugs here, right? Similar to Amsterdam. Like, well, shouldn't we have the same outcome as Amsterdam because we followed their path? No, we only follow their path in one thing. They also have mental health support. We rank 49th and 50th for that. They also have drug and alcohol treatment and support that's provided. Oregon ranks 50th in that. They also have a different school system that doesn't encourage the type of recreational use of the same way. Oregon ranks, I think, like 47th or 48th in public school effectiveness and efficiency. So you can't do one and not have the other and expect the same results as somebody else, right? And so that's not an AI problem. That's just a cultural, systematic problem that we have here. It's not a technology problem. With technology, we need better systems here.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a good transition for my next kind of segment here, which is the automated valuation models. Have you heard of those?
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk on like, okay, so they're analyzing neighborhood sentiment. So what that actually means is they're able to quantify based off of a vibe of like a street corner or a neighborhood. Right? So the algorithm, and again, this is just what I've picked up, so you tell me if I'm right or wrong, but if the algorithm detects like a spike in anxiety on Twitter from a specific zip code, or if the sentiment drops because, for instance, a few shops closed down due to XYZ, then the value of your greatest asset, your home, fluctuates in real time. And so they're using this as like a dynamic pricing for your life, essentially. If the Uber surges pricing, then that can also constitute as home rates going up, or your interest rate, not your interest rates, your property value going up because the area of which you live in is starting to get more hip, whatever, which I think is, first of all, it's crazy. And so if your neighborhood property value is tied to the sentiment analysis, do you think we're incentivizing a culture where everyone has to perform some form of happiness, almost like that of a court jester, just to be able to keep their equity? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, well, yeah. So you're talking about, can a neighborhood collaborate in such a way to socially engineer the communal increase of property values, essentially, is what you're saying. I've never heard it asked that way. No, because people can't even agree on, if Whataburger or In-N-Out Burger is better. Or what, like most communities don't have enough of a shared common experience where they can collaborate in that way.
Yeah.
You go to any HOA meeting, and you can see that play out plain as day, or any community meeting, or, a community garage sale. Some things like that can be coordinated, but I don't see that being able to be manipulated. I see that, being able to be a good tool for, I hate saying the elite, but when you're looking at asset classes and where to invest and whatnot, I see it there, but I don't see it trickling down to be able to be manipulated and wielded by the homeowners themselves. I don't. Do you? I don't see that.
I can see it in very, very tight niche specific areas, especially like where we live. Like I could see this happening in like, I don't know, like Southeast Belmont. For some reason.
Well, this is okay. Let me play this out.
And I'm using
This
Go
is the
ahead.
job of the local government, really. So, like in my
Yeah.
city here, they do a nice job of doing like community events and arranging, the Harvest Festival and the Fourth of July Festival and the parades and the things, because that's supposed to create community environment where people are happier to live there and therefore take better care of their property and
Yep.
therefore shop locally.
Yep.
And so I think that can be socially engineered by your local government of sorts,
Hmm.
right? But I
Hmm.
don't see it being socially engineered by the residents themselves.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Because it kind of is done now. Like, the quality of schools, like, for instance, I used to be super involved in the governments around here. And like a lot of the conversation is like, how do we get the messaging of the school out to increase our property value? How do we get the
Mm.
messaging of this being a safe community out so we attract immigration so people want to move here? Right. So that is done at the government level, or should be. I just don't see it being done at the civilian level is all. But it is done, I guess, now that I say it in that way, by certain jurisdictions, because that is what they're supposed to do. And they're financially incentivized, because you increase the tax rolls, you increase your tax base, and you increase your budget. It's the best way for a government to raise money, is to raise the standard of living in an area. It's not to raise taxes. It's to raise the
Mm.
standard of living, the quality of living, the quality of the community. That's the best way a government can raise their tax rolls and their income.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I think this is leading into our last segment here. There is a big misconception, I think, in terms of how people use artificial intelligence in specific industries. The thing that I get questioned a lot, like I had a real life example. I had my youngest sister, who's 6 months pregnant, came over with my mother and my aunt to visit, and we were having this conversation about AI. And I've noticed that majority of people that have conversation about AI, it's always ChatGPT. So they don't
Mm-hmm.
mention Gemini, they don't mention Claude, they don't mention the average consumer. So ask ChatGPT. And I literally sat to them, I'm like, listen, I'm not an expert, but I want to hold a class for our family just so that I can give you guys some pointers, because what I look at their questionnaires and what they're asking and how they're asking, it's like they're using ChatGPT as a confidant. And then I was referencing this video that I saw on Instagram. I don't know if I sent it to you, but it's this woman that was telling the world that her mother thinks that ChatGPT is like a customer support person in like the Philippines who just doesn't sleep and communicates with her.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like, in all seriousness, like no joke, like it's funny, but and so there's this weird, like, I don't know, like disconnect between I think what is perceived reality versus actual reality. And then you throw on top of the fact that there's this explosion of AI slop, right? That there's so much synthetic noise that it tends to put us kind of like in this pilot purgatory. We're
Mhm.
trying to find the real signal in all of this. What is the vertical that we need to leverage in order to be able to make sure that these specialized models are trained on proprietary data versus generic hallucinations? Or because if it's being trained on what people are asking it, and this is the question that I get, this isn't me asking, this is the general counsel. If they're being trained, if these AI tools are being trained on the generalized questions of people, it almost feels like, you ever had that conversation, like never argue with an idiot because they'll always win because they've had
Yeah,
more practice at it. That's
sure.
kind of like how I feel. Like that's kind of feel like most people are like, well, I don't understand. If we're all just asking them dumb questions, how is this thing going to get smarter? You know what I'm saying?
That's assuming, so part of the training is the reinforcement loops, that they
Oh,
do in post
okay.
training. And so a lot of the so there's pre-training in a large language model, and there's post-training and and fine-tuning. And just to oversimplify the whole process. And a lot of that is actually done earlier in the process, in the post-training process, before it reaches the general consumer. You can see in a lot of the chatbot interfaces, they do have like little thumbs up or little thumbs down. Do you like this generation? Do you not like this generation? In terms
Mm-hmm.
of like getting feedback from the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So that may affect the quality of the generations kind of globally, as the collective interacts with something. And this is really your question, is like, what happens
Yeah.
when the collective interacts?
Yep.
But the one-on-one doesn't affect the global intelligence or dynamic of the LLM in that way. It just affects your own individual instance. So because when I'm interacting, or let's say, Mo, that your family member is interacting with ChatGPT, they have their prompt that's going to talk to the LLM. There's the system prompt of ChatGPT that's going to talk to the LLM. And then that's also referencing whatever memories or special instructions or whatever else is also layered in to the context that's considered when the LLM gives the generation. So that's why each individual's ChatGPT acts differently, talks differently, has a different personality, because it's in fact impacted at your own individual level. So, but that isn't necessarily making it back up to making the LLM dumber in this way. Like if we got a million people that are just like telling it stupid things and talking about it in stupid ways, that's not actually impacting the quality of the LLM for you.
Got it.
Not necessarily, right? So, and that's part of one of the misunderstandings is what goes back to affect the training data, inside of one of these frontier models. Where's the filters in place that if you do have a million people saying some things to it, is that affecting it in a weird way? I would say differently than that is you could game the LLM in different ways. So let's say that somebody created like a honeypot of information about a particular topic that was all bad information, got it to rank, and had like nefarious prompt injecting instructions on that page. So if an LLM goes to read that page, it could come back and then it would affect your generation, Mo, right? Because it went and got bad information. It was prompt injected in a way to act and perform and say, dumb things. That can happen, but that's not at the systemic root level of the LLM. That's just in your experience.
Got it. Okay. All right. So we're not, because one of the concerns on the interwebs was that people were thinking that, so if you wanted truth and not sludge and nonsense and crap, that you essentially were paying a premium for that subscription service. I'm like, no, you're paying a premium for more tokens, for more accessibility, for faster this, faster that, optimize this, optimize that.
Not for more truth. There isn't a way to pay for more truth. There is a way to pay for higher compute. So you can pay for like the pro model that has like, let's say, either larger parameters that pulls from, or it does have a thinking deeper sort of mode to it, where it does burn more tokens in order to give you that deeper level of compute. And the more and more I think about this, the more and more I think my prediction is right, that one of the last remaining currencies in a physical sense is going to be compute. Like if I can afford to pay the $200 for this level of compute, I can outdo the people that can't. It's almost like a caste system is being even more indelibly marked, between the have and have nots based on your ability to have compute at your fingertips. And so I've said that, like a couple of years ago, I literally had a dream where I was like, oh, a currency is not gold, or the dollar or the dong, in Vietnam, or whatever the other, fun names for money is actually in your ability to have compute that will run your business or your robots or your army, or being able to help you personally as a personal assistant versus you having to do it all yourself. That will be a form of power, is how much compute do you have.
Yeah, that's interesting to consider if you were to factor in what you pay for now in terms of whatever gives you leverage and the thing that you're trying to do good at. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more and more true. I still don't hear anybody talking about that, but it feels like as it becomes more ingrained into our system, it would be like, if you had a great idea to manufacture something, but you couldn't afford the electricity, right? You need the electricity to power the manufacturing plant to make your goods and services or your cars. And if you don't have the power, and that's manpower, electricity power, so on and so forth, you can't build the thing. Compute is in that same way. If you don't have enough compute, you can't build the software or the business or perform the tasks as fast or as robustly or as good as other people with more compute. So it's got to be a form of power here coming up soon.
Sweet. I have one more question before we close up. I thought it was interesting. If you could, what's the one AI free habit that you refuse to give up? We talked about this before, but it got so much interesting feedback that I wanted to mention again. And I was curious to see if you had a different answer this time around. If there's, let's say this is your second most AI free habit that you refuse to give up for the interim, at least.
I remember this. I talked about reading slowly last time. I'm going to say prayer. And I say prayer to mean that you carve a space for yourself each day to allow yourself to realize that it's not all about you, and to let in whatever that is, your relationship with God or relationship with the universe, or just give yourself space to get out of your own way for a minute, to learn by not talking, by listening, by creating a sense of stillness. That has now become more and more and more non-negotiable. When I'm working with AI all day long or making decisions all day long, that's so much data to process in your mind. That's so much stimulus and input to process. And, when I say I read a book, I read it slowly now, is because I'm reading AI, information and interactions like so fast and so quickly, making iterative decisions so fast. So the non-negotiable more has been that meditative state. I call it prayer. Some people call it meditation. Some people call it stillness. That is got to be protected now for me. I've got to realize that there's so much more to listen to than just the thoughts in my own mind or the conclusions I've made and decisions I've made during the day. And I hope that more and more people do carve out that space for themselves on a consistent basis, multiple times a day if you can.
I love that, man. Thank you.
What about you? Do you have a suggestion at all?
Do I what? I'm sorry?
Do you have a suggestion at all, or an idea that you want to share as well? Because it's a big one.
I really like the stillness thing. For me, it's I'm in my head a lot. And so any kind of external force, AI, writing, content, we're all overly stimulated. But for people that are really in their head a lot and are having 17 conversations going on at the same time, the biggest thing for me to do is literally just to put pen to paper. And whether that's gratitude, whether that's just kind of like dumping my thoughts onto the piece of paper just so that I can get it out of my head. Mm-hmm. Those are usually the things that I reference to. The most important for me is knowing that in the stillness, there is I guess like a relief on the other end of it. If you go through the process and you give that process truly genuine, wholehearted acceptance. Otherwise, it becomes a fallacy. Becomes something that you're just trying to get through the motions and it's not serving you. So that for me would be the most important.
I like it. Stillness, there's finding more and more power. Stillness is almost like an act of rebellion in today's world where everyone's rushed, in this certain movement towards certain things. And I think it's really good for the soul to have acts of rebellion throughout the day. And to claim a stake of here's who I am and where I am, and this is because I choose to be here doing this in this way, and I'm not being manipulated in any sort of way. This is an intentional decision to do this thing. And creating stillness is an act of rebellion in a noisy world. And people that are rebellions are the ones that generally change the world. It's hard to change the world and change your life when you're constantly in movement without creating intentional moments of stillness to ensure that movement's headed the right direction.
Agreed. Well said. There's an exorbitant amount of noise in the world, and people can reference and they can go to and they can be eluded and they can be deceived, and this person is the guru of this and this person has the best answer for you and this system has this. There is so much to go through. Like, of course, I'm not surprised more people are duped, honestly, because there is just so much confusion. And if you don't know what you don't know, then it becomes like anybody's game at that point. So I truly believe that if you don't want to navigate this whole business realm alone, if you want the blueprints for what's actually coming, if you want help from someone that has been in the trenches and it's no bullshit, real actionable steps that can help provide a system, can help architect way forward, go to ericpost.ai. This is where we're building the raft. Okay, remember that the map isn't a territory. It's not the valuation isn't the home, and the prediction is not the future. We don't want to let the algorithm tell you what your life is worth. We don't want to keep your hands in the dirt. So keep your eyes on the horizon, not on the screen. Okay, we're trying to minimize, and for God's sakes, keep checking to make sure that these specific floorboards that you're standing on are real. Stay human, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.